Hey everyone, kolst here, bringing you this video on the new Hearthstone Arena meta, the first meta involving the Saviors of Uldum card set.
Ooh, that's cool.
So in this video, I'm going to be talking about what I believe are the 7 most impactful cards of the new meta. Now note when I say impactful, I do not mean the most powerful. I'm recording this video around the end of the first week of the meta, so for a card to be featured on this list, either it needs to have an incredibly unique effect, or it's going to be a card that has a very powerful effect that you're going to need to think about and keep in mind for your drafts and your gameplay in order to win the most games. Also, this list is going to bias heavily towards cards that you're going to be more likely to see more often. So most legendaries and cards from the lower win rate classes, you're not going to see as much, so they're not very likely to appear on this list. Also, there are some neutral cards that are potentially more powerful than some of the cards on the list, but their effects, I would say, are not as unique, and you may be playing around them anyway by playing from older cards like Fungalmancer that are also in this meta. So I'm going to include less of these as well. Also, any card that is underbucketed, meaning in the draft it's going to appear more often against much weaker cards, is going to appear much more highly in this list than it otherwise would. And also, to quickly introduce myself, I'm kolst. I've recently been playing Hearthstone Arena and making content full-time. Last season, I was able to get a high average on all 3 regions, so I'm waiting for the leaderboard to come out to see where these averages exactly will put me. So if you're interested in more high-level arena content, make sure to subscribe to this channel and follow me on Twitch as well. Alright, so without any further delay, let's get right into the list. So the first 2 cards on this list are similar enough that I'm going to talk about them together. So those 2 cards are number 7, Siamat, and number 6, Pit Crocolisk. So Siamat is an interesting and unique card. So it's a 7 mana 6/6 with the option you get to choose 2 out of these 4 options: Rush, Wind Fury, Taunt, and Divine Shield. So Pit Crocolisk is a more normal looking minion. It's a 8 mana 5/6, deal 5 damage. So the reason why I say these cards are similar is because it turns out most of the time you're going to see Siamat used as a Rush Divine Shield because those 2 abilities work really well together. So basically, Siamat is usually going to be a 7 mana 6/6, deal 6 damage, which looks a lot like Pit Crocolisk. So with Siamat, you have the upside that the numbers look a bit higher, of course, and you also have the additional options of if you really need Taunt or Wind Fury, you can take those. But the Pit Crocolisk is also not without its own upsides. It can bypass Taunt, and most importantly, it can also go face. So if I was just making a list of the top 10 most powerful cards from this expansion, I don't think Pit Crocolisk would even make this list, but Siamat certainly would. But the reason why I put both of these cards in this list is because they give a lot of classes a tool that they typically don't have, which is to gain value through initiative. And this was what made Firelands Portal such an impactful card when it first came out. It was one of the first cards Blizzard printed that could really do this so reliably and efficiently. So with Siamat's sheer efficiency and Pit Crocolisk's ability to go face, these are both strong value-generating options that you don't feel bad about putting even in an aggressive deck. Now, although I would say that Siamat is the more powerful card, I put Pit Crocolisk higher on this list for a couple reasons. The first one being that it's a common, while Siamat is a legendary, so you're just going to see Pit Crocolisk way more often. Also, it really is a critical thing that Pit Crocolisk can go face. So that gives a lot of classes that usually don't have the tool to burn someone from 5 health that ability. So that's another thing you're going to have to keep in mind in your games. And because you're going to see Pit Crocolisk so often, that's going to make minions with certain stat lines much weaker than they otherwise would be. Poor boy. And that's something that I think should actually be impacting at least a little bit the way that you're drafting. Alright, so let's move on to number 5 on this list. Possibly the most interesting Hearthstone card ever printed, Zephyrs the Great. So if you're not familiar from this card, it will give you an option of 3 different cards which its algorithm thinks will be the best cards for your current situation. These cards will always come from the basic or classic sets. In practice, there's 2 ways you'll use this card. Either you use this card at the beginning of your turn, and this card will try to give you a play for the same turn, or use it at the end of your turn, and it will try to give you a play for the next turn. So for example, on turn 9, and your opponent has a lot of minions, you could play this and it'll probably give you Flame Strike, or if it's like your turn 7, you can play this card at the end of your turn, and it'll probably give you something like Tyrion. Also, this card should never miss lethal, so no matter how odd of a card it needs to give you lethal, it should give you that. And if it sees a really good way to set up lethal, maybe give you like a Power Blast, it should do that too. So this card, of course, is not limited by class. So obviously, this card gives a lot of classes tools that otherwise it simply wouldn't have. And I've actually been seeing this card a surprising amount in the arena. So those reasons are why I'm featuring it in this list. And so although this card is very fun and interesting to play with, it's an absolute nightmare to play against. Simply put, this is just not a card you can ever play around your opponent having. Just yesterday, I got to play my first run with this card. It was honestly a pretty terrible deck, but this card won several games by itself. I've even heard a few high-level players say they're thinking it might actually be the case that this card is so powerful that it might be worth avoiding duplicates in your drafts when you can help it, just because the payoff of if you happen to get this card later in the draft is so high that it might actually be worth having slightly weaker decks on average. But I'm not 100% sold on that. So this is definitely the most unique card. I only have this card on number 5 on this list because it is a legendary, so you just won't see it that often. At least until you get to high winds. Then all of a sudden you're going to see a lot of it. It really reminds me of that time back when there was just a certain mage card that was in every deck above 10 wins. Can't put my finger on it though. Alright, so let's move on to the next card. I have, at number 4, the first class card on this list, a Warlock card, Diseased Vulture. So this card is a 4-mana 3/5, which is really decent, with a very powerful effect. When your hero takes damage, summon a random 3-drop. So the most obvious use of this card in the Warlock is that you can combo it with Life Tap. So for 2 mana, not only do you get a card, you also get a random 3-drop. Pretty good. This compares very well to another older card that was printed, Murloc Knight, which was a 4-mana 3/4, and on average it would give you a weaker card than a 3-drop, so this card looks really good already. But unlike Murloc Knight, this card will also combo with any other card that happens to damage your hero. So there's a few cards like that. So a few that stand out: Flame Imp, Fulgur Homunculus, Neverset, Thrasher. These are cards that you get absolutely gross results out of with this card. And there's also the chance that you just get a single proc out of it and you just happen to roll Injured Blade Master and you basically just win the game on the spot. Similarly, if you ever play this card and your opponent just isn't able to kill it the turn you play it, they're pretty much screwed, right? And I think really just due to the win harder nature of this card, I think it's warranting of a spot on this list. And although Warlock does have another really powerful card that was also added this expansion, I still haven't really seen anyone put it to much use, so I'm not gonna put it on this list. Alright, so talking about cards you're gonna see a lot, let's move on to number 3 on this list, and that's Desert Spear. Okay, so this card is a 3-mana 1/3 weapon, not that amazing, but it also summons a 1/1 rush with each swing. So in total, that's 6 damage for 3 mana. It's pretty good. And essentially it gives you the flexibility to do that damage however you want. 2 damage per turn. If you need to ping 2 different things or deal 2 damage to one thing, you can do that. So this card is essentially a much faster and better Piranha Launcher, and that was a really good arena card. And the fact that this card happens to come in with all these reborn minions that have these annoying 1 health respawns, it's a really useful tool to have all of these pings. And those pings, that's typically been one of Hunter's weaknesses. You don't have all that many tools to deal 1 damage outside of Unleash the Hounds, and you do also have Candle Shot in this meta, but really, that's about it. And Swarm of Locusts was also added this expansion, so all of a sudden, this thing that used to be Hunter's weakness is all of a sudden their strength. And again, with all the reborn minions, if you look at all the top classes, I don't think it's that coincidence that besides Druid at the bottom, all the classes at the top are all the classes that can ping really easily. Just for another example, like Basilisk is another card that came back that absolutely devastates classes that can't ping well. So really with all that stuff combined, this ability to ping is super meta defining, and that's why I had this card so high on this list. Alright, so talking about a weakness becoming a strength, let's move on to number 2 on this list, and that's Arcane Flak Mage. So this card is a 2-mana 3/2. Whenever you play a secret, deal a 1-sided 2 damage AoE to your opponent's board. I think that there's a real chance that this card, at least for Arena, is potentially the most oppressive card ever printed. This kind of a board effect, to be able to deal such easy AoE to your opponent's board, simply has never existed in the Arena. I'm talking about really for any class, especially for mage though, like their AoEs are usually rather expensive. So this is really a new tool for them. So although mage does have some obvious AoE tools, like Flame Strike for instance, a lot of their AoEs are more telegraphed and predictable, but this is anything but that. It's not just the fact that Blizzard, sometimes they get certain cheap AoE tools like Twilight Flame Collar, Volcanic Potion, that stuff has existed before. And if this card was just a 5 mana 3/2 deal 2 damage AoE, that wouldn't be so bad. But this card has the potential to be so much more than that. So there's several ways you can deal more than just 2 damage AoE with this card. You can play 2 Flak Mages at once and get the benefit twice every time you play a secret. You can also play multiple secrets. You can even cheat out the mana cost of secrets using Ancient Mysteries. The possibilities are really endless. And don't forget, you still get the benefit of the secret, and if you don't kill the Flak Mage or Flak Mages, they can just play more secrets and get the effect over and over again, potentially. Also, in this particular expansion, you just got this new powerful secret, Flame Ward. You also have a lot of other secrets coming back. There's something insane, like maybe like 12 secrets in the meta right now. They all have different procs. They're really impossible to play around. You also have cards like Arcanologist coming back, which just makes the strategy even more reliable. I think it's possible, even if you go back to Wild Arena, I don't think there's ever been a time where there's so much variety in the number of mage secrets available. So it's just absolutely impossible to play around everything. So the result of that is really this kind of strategy is just completely toxic. If you're playing any kind of remotely aggressive or board-based strategy, you just have to throw your hands up in the air and say, I just hope nothing bad happens, because there's nothing you can do about it if they have it. It's a really terrible experience for Arena. Frankly, I would not be the first high-level player to say this card just should not exist in this game mode. I don't know, for some reason it just seems like Blizzard's thing lately to give Mage all these just stupidly oppressive cards in Arena. I don't know why. Alright, so at number 1 on this list, we have Obsidian Destroyer, Wrap Golem. Wait, this card is busted. Wait, so this card's a legendary too, right? No? Neutral rare? Are you kidding me? Well, at least they're gonna bucket it properly, right? Like first bucket, maybe top second. What? Are you Alright, so jokes aside, this card is good, but what really puts it at number 1 on this list is the fact that how severely underbucketed it is. So this card is just so much better than the cards it's up against. You're just always going to pick it when you see it, and it's a neutral, so you're just going to see this card all over the place. So the way this minion works is it's a reborn minion, making it tough to clear, and it also spawns taunts, which just make it harder to clear, so unless you have a lot of stuff on board, a lot of classes just simply don't have the tools to deal with this minion efficiently. You'll often see this card get really gross value, like they have to go through the 1/1 and then you see someone run a Amani Warbearer or something straight into this thing. It's like, it's gross, honestly. There's been times where I've been behind on board and I just knock my opponent down to just one large minion and then I play this thing and then they don't have the ability to deal with the taunts and then I just kill face a couple times with the 7/5 and kill them. Like it's such a powerful card in certain classes. So really that just makes it a really oppressive card. And it's just, I can't imagine, it must suck to be on the other side of that. I'm sure I have had that happen to me a couple of times. Doesn't feel good. And like a few of the other cards on this list, this card's effect is just powerful enough, it'll actually just win you games. And again, it's a really brutal punish to certain classes, especially the ones that have trouble pinging. Alright, well, thanks for watching, everyone. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you like this video. And don't forget to check me out on Twitch as well if you want some juicy arena action. The link for that will be in the description. So again, I built this list off of my own limited experience off of my first week in the arena, so I'm interested to see what you guys think, if there's any other cards that you would have included that I didn't include. In any case, I'll see you guys around. Peace out.